Good morning, good students. You are welcome again to our platform. I'm very excited for today's video because we are going to do something fresh, something new. In our previous videos, we have been analyzing our primary texts, be they in literature or in English language, but today I want us to do some revision as we build up to the GCE. Remember, the countdown is getting more and more intensive, and so what I have here is the Far North Regional Mock. I was privileged to lay my hands on it, so I thought it would do us a whole lot of good if we can go through it and we revise the questions that came for the students over there in the north. So it is paper 1, of course, and paper 1 carries 50 MCQs. So let us see if we can present paper 1 for the neutrals or for students who have not been well drilled on the structure of the advanced level literature paper. Now, paper 1, of course, like every other paper 1, carries 50 MCQs. I repeat, 50 MCQs. And it's an obligatory task for all the candidates going in for literature. Everyone is expected to answer their MCQs, and you answer that by taking the right options out of 4 possible options. Of course, letters A, B, C, and D. You have to choose the right one. And then for advanced level literature paper 1, candidates, it is rewarding for you to understand that not all the MCQs you see in paper 1 will come from the 10 primary texts. Some of them will come from generalities in literature, which we call literary theory. You see, if we don't call literary theory, sometimes we call it literary notions. These are concepts that are very key to the understanding of the genre or the discipline as a whole. So candidates are expected to have been drilled right from the introduction of literature in Form 1 through Forms 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, 4, 5, lower seat and then up seat. So the examiner will task you on those little things that you might tend to ignore, thinking that they are just too easy for them to come, but the examiner will bring them though. So we are going to go through them one after the other, and because of looking at these MCQs, we are going to be digging deep, looking at the various the different concepts, devices, thematic concerns, author's biography, looking at background knowledge of our various texts, and then we are also going to be digging deep at the various phases of English literature, the years that it has come through, and all of that, because that is what makes up paper 1. Now let us bear in mind that the syllabus for advanced literature is a very bulky one though. It covers all the different periods that English literature has gone through. Through the medieval period, we're talking about Jovichosa, the Elizabethan period with Shakespearean, with playwrights like Shakespeare, coming down through the 18th, 19th century, the Victorian age, and right to the present time. So we are going to go through all of them one after the other. So let us get on to it. Now, question 1, read those. Now, it's going to appear on the screen there. If you like, you might want to just jot it down. So I would recommend that you get a pen and a paper. And I also advise that you jot down whatever you can jot down, because when we are revising paper 1, we discuss quite a whole bunch of stuff. It's not just the questions here. The examiner might bring up something which we discussed here. It might not appear like the question we are discussing, but they might touch on something that we've revised in the platform, and you will be privileged enough to handle that without breaking sweat. So get a piece of paper or a book, just put it in front of you and jot down what you can from the video. And if you have any other MCQs, I would also suggest that you get my contact from a bio or from the comment section. I will drop my contact there, so you can email me whatever script you have, and then we can revise it on the platform. After all, they say life is a learning ladder. We all learn as we grow up. So let us come back to question 1, literary theory. Now, the first question reads thus: the repetition of an initial consonant sound at the beginning of a word in a sentence is called. Now that question reminds me of linguistics. Oh yes, of the few course I did in linguistics, because it has to do with sounds of English. Now we call that phonetics. Phonetics is the study of sounds of English, and we call it a phone. A phone means sounds. So when we talk about consonant sounds, we are talking about sounds, how we articulate sounds. Take note that every language begins with the formation of sounds. And then these sounds build up into words, and the words will also build up into clauses and phrases, which of course will come together to give us sentences. And so when we talk about consonant sounds, we are going back to the letters of the alphabet. Now let us bear in mind that we have 26 letters of the alphabet. And out of these 26 letters of the alphabet, 5 of them, only 5 of them are vowel sounds. Now, you find them over here. We have letter A, letter E, letter A, letter E, letter E, letter O, and letter U. Now, these letters, we call them vowel sounds. They are the vowel sounds we have in letters of the alphabet, which therefore means that the remainder ones are consonants. Are we there? So if you don't find any letter among these ones, then it is a consonant sound. Now, it therefore means that in literature, when we have any of these vowel sounds appearing successively, that is 2 times or more in a line of poetry, call it music if you will, or in a sentence, that's a literary device. Oh yes, we call it an alliteration. So I will repeat, the reoccurrence of a consonant sound, that is those that are not here, in a line of poetry or in a sentence, is called an alliteration. But then when we have vowel sounds like the ones above here, reoccurring successively in a line of poetry or in a sentence, we call that an assonance. So when we talk about consonants, what we talk about assonance, of course, we are talking about vowels, and when we have alliteration, we are talking about consonants. So it is very important that you put a handle between these two and be able to separate them, so that whenever they come up, no matter how the examiner might put them in front of you, you can handle them without any stress. So let us go back through that question again. Now it reads thus: the repetition of an initial consonant sound at the beginning of a word in a sentence is called imagery, and alliteration, assonance, and anapest. So the right answer there is B, which is alliteration. Okay, now we go to question number 2. Question number 2 reads thus: a moist young moon hung above the mist of a neighboring meadow is an example of which literary device? A says personification, B says symbol, C says metaphor, and D we have assonance. Now let us run that sentence again in our mind. It says a moist young moon hung above the mist of a neighboring meadow. Now you see, when they give human qualities to things that are not human, non-humans, or inanimate objects, therefore that thing has been turned into a person. In literature, we call it personification. So what then is personification? The word personification is a derivative. It comes from the word person. Person is a human being like you and I. And so if we personify something, when something is personified, when we give that object or that inanimate thing qualities or attributes that should only go for humans, therefore that thing has been personified. So if in that sentence the moon is described as moist and young, it therefore tells us that the right answer among the 4 options given us there is personification, because the moon has been personified. Now candidates always make this error of getting all mixed up between personification and metaphor. See, for personification, bear in mind, you realize something. Let us put here a person. And then on the other side, we put here, let's say, an object. And then here, let's put, it might not be an animal, an object. Let's put an animal. And this way we put a person. You see, an object and an animal are non-humans. So what then are we saying? For personification, the qualities move from a person to an object. That is where we have personification. Don't get it all mixed up. When the qualities are moving, if they are being transferred from a human to an object or a non-human, that is when we have personification, because that object is now qualified as a human, which is not true. So say it has been personified. Are we there? But then, when the qualities are moving from an animal or an object to a human being, it is not personification, it's just a simple metaphor. It is not. Candidates will see this and will still call it personification. No. Personification means moving our attributes to non-humans. If I say I love this pen, she's beautiful. The pen there is not a human being. For me to take her quality she and place on it, then I've personified this pen. So you should be able to understand what personification is, so that you'll be able to identify them as you read through different literary texts. Okay, let's take the third one. So the right answer for that number 2 is A. Now number 3, which literary device includes the use of words to express something different or opposite from their literal meaning, totally beyond our expectation? You see, when we hear opposite, there are 2 things that should come up our mind: irony or paradox. When we hear opposite, irony or paradox, especially in a sentence. They say which literary device includes the use of words to express something different or opposite. You see, when we say opposite, we are talking about paradox, the direct opposite. So the answer there says A, hyperbole, B, irony, C, simile, and D, paradox. So the clear answer for that option is, for that question is D, paradox. Why? Because of the word opposite. When you have the opposite meaning of something, it's quite paradoxical. Okay, let us come down to number 4. They say water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink is an example of which figure of speech? You see, the sentence water, water reminds me of Coleridge. Oh yes, Coleridge is one of those iconic poets in England whose works we have read quite a lot. He was one heavyweight of a poet. And so when we look at that question, it is very clear. The answer almost pops up instantly. It says water, water everywhere, but not a drop to drink. How is it possible that we can have water everywhere around us and we can't find even a drop to drink? We can't find even a drop to drink. That tells me that it's quite ironical, isn't it? That we have water all over us, but we can't find a drop to drink. Now they are asking us, it's an example of which figurative device? They say A, symbol, B, simile, C, irony, and D, imagery. Of course, the overwhelming answer there is C, irony. It's such an irony that we can find ourselves maybe in a large ocean with salty water. Of course, we can't scoop salt water and put in our mouths. It's not healthy. It will kill us because of the salty content. But then we find ourselves in a scenario like that. Of course, we are surrounded by water. But how come we don't have any to drink? Quite an irony. So the right answer obviously is irony, which is C. So we then move over to question 5. Now question 5 reads thus: the example of hyperbole includes. Now let us bear in mind that hyperbole is exaggeration. When there's that huge exaggeration, we sometimes call it gross exaggeration. When a situation has been so blown out of proportion, that is hyperbole at work. So our examiner tells us that the example of hyperbole includes A, he is running faster than the wind. Whoa, that guy can be fast. Oh yes, he should be very fast, doesn't he? Now when we look at that sentence, the sentence says that he's running faster than the wind. I mean, how can you run faster than the wind? If you run faster than the wind, you should be very fast, right? You should be very, very fast. Now, of course, you can't run faster than the wind. So it therefore tells us that sentence, of course, he runs very fast. Let's also look at an athlete like Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt is the fastest man on earth. He has broken a bunch of, records in sprinting and marathon, sprinting in some of the biggest races that we've seen so far in competitions across the world. So, but then we observe something. If I should say that Usain Bolt runs faster than the wind, it doesn't literally mean that he runs faster than the wind. It is just a figure of speech to tell you that he runs very fast. So bear in mind that figures of speech are those instruments we use in our conversation that generates a deeper meaning. You usually don't interpret them with their physical notions or physical symbols or objects or images, but you go deeper because they always carry a deeper meaning inside. So, number 2 says, your skin is softer than silk. That is another reflection of hyperbole. Your skin cannot be softer than silk because silk is a fabric. It's a fabric, something like cotton. So that is another manifestation of hyperbole too. And then C says both A and B. Of course, A and B they are all instances of hyperbole. And then D says he is the Jesus in his time. Now, D is not hyperbole, it is more of a metaphor, because I believe that his humility and goodness have been likened to that of Jesus Christ. So that's why the speaker says he is a Jesus in his time. So that question there, the right option there is C, which is both A and B. So we go to question 6. Question 6 says, when a word describes a sound, and actually mimics, not you, that mimic means to imitate. When you mimic somebody, you are imitating that person. So if they say when a word describes a sound and actually mimics the sound of the object or action it refers to when it is spoken, is termed as A, hyperbole, B, onomatopoeia. Onomatopoeia. Now let's discuss it. Onomatopoeia is my favorite device. Well, that was when I was singing for 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4. But that was not actually because I knew what onomatopoeia was at the time. But then I loved it because of the sound of that word onomatopoeia. The onomatopoeia part sounds really well. And most candidates will just love the word because most students rather, because it sounds well. It sounds well, onomatopoeia. It's not like the usual snappy onomatopoeia, more like musical. But then what is this device? Onomatopoeia is one of the most common devices we see around us, even at home, in school, going, commuting around town. We usually come across onomatopoeia, just that we have never known that this is onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeia is a sound device where audiovisual images, or I would say it's a device where sounds create audiovisual images in our minds. Let us say that I were to take a bundle of keys and then throw them against a wall. As soon as my key crashes on this wall and falls, the clattering of the keys on the ground or the hard floor will tell you that somebody's keys must have fallen. Now that sound you hear there is what you call onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeias are very, very practical because they help us to visualize the image of what must have been going on there. It's the same way that you are passing through a neighborhood and you hear a dog barking furiously. The barking of that, the sound of that dog barking creates an image of a wild dog staring at you. Are we there? The same way that you might also hear the screeching of the tires of a car that almost knocks down a commuter around the junction, and you hear the chauffeur pulls the brakes and you get some kind of grrr, and you see people stretching their necks out and asking, ask them, what's happening? Now, why are they reacting that way? Because of the screeching sound. Now, that is onomatopoeia at work. So the right answer there is onomatopoeia, because the sound device, it helps us to describe a sound and creates images or objects in our minds. Okay, number 7 says, who is a modern philosopher who was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature? Now, Nobel Prize for Literature is something that I would like us to discuss here. The Nobel Prize for Literature is one of those iconic awards in our discipline, literature, that is rare to come these days. But then you realize that those who have been privileged enough to win it are those who have been outstanding, those who have actually taken literature to a whole new level. Now, why I'm discussing is that we in Africa we have Wole Soyinka. He's our very own African, one of the best African writers the continent has produced. He's the only one who has won this award for the recognition of his works, and he won this award in 1986. I would like you to take special note of it because you are likely going to see that in paper 1. Why am I saying so? Because Wole Soyinka has some of his texts. I think he has a text under study, paper 3, A Dance of the Forest, which he draws from Yoruba mythology. And so you realize that play, A Dance of the Forest, was written and performed on the day Nigeria got its independence. That was in 1960 from their then colonial masters, of course, the British. So Wole Soyinka has been giving much recognition globally, internationally for his outstanding works in literature. In all genres, he has proliferated in all genres, and so he's somebody we continue to celebrate today. So the mention of that Nobel Prize for Literature reminds me of that, so I thought I should throw some light on that. Please take note of it. Wole Soyinka won that prize in 1986, the Nobel Prize for Literature. It is very important that you take note of that. I'm very sure that you might find it at the GCE paper 1, so you shouldn't break a sweat or you shouldn't scare yourself much when you see it. So let us come back to the question at hand. They say, who is the modern philosopher who was awarded Nobel Prize for Literature? The right answer there is C, Bertrand Russell. Now, Bertrand Russell is a literary mind there who won that prize. Now, number 8, which period is known as the golden age of English literature? English literature. Now, why I'm laughing is that it is thanks to the British that we have English literature. But then, as an African, don't tell me that the British man brought literature to Africa. Oh yes, we had our forms of literature, mostly oral literature. The white man only gave us a piece of paper, letters of the alphabet. But then before he came, we had our literature. We had oral forms of literature. Well, we'll come to that another time. I don't want to get into all of that. We'll just help us. We'll just be digressing. But then let's note that we had different forms of literature which were mostly oral. We had the proverbs, we had our legends, we had folk tales, we had epics, all of that, songs of lament, dirges. Those were forms of literature which we celebrated and we had before the white man came. But then let us look at English literature. You see, English literature has gone through the years. But then we must also know that in the Middle Ages in Europe, Latin, oh yes, the language Latin, which Chaucer used quite a lot in the Canterbury Tales, was a language used for learning in Europe at the time. But then Geoffrey Chaucer is recognized as a father of English literature. Why? Because that text, you realize that text, the Canterbury Tales, was able to put English language out there, and scholars could realize that Latin shouldn't be the only language for great learning. English can as well be used. And so ever since then, the British, through their colonial empires across the world, were able to export their language and their culture, which of course means literature, and that is how we have been able to read some of their great works. But then looking back at the historical evolution of English literature, the 18th century in England is generally regarded as the best period in England. Why? Because it was in that period that some of the great works were written in England. That period too saw some of the greatest English writers like the Thomas Hardy, the Charles Dickens. These were some of the greatest literary minds the world has ever seen. So that period was regarded as a golden age of English literature because it had some of the great works and the best writers who came up appeared during that period. We are talking also about William Wordsworth. William Wordsworth, the pioneer of Romanticism, a philosophy that espoused or that celebrated nature and the beauty of nature. So let us leave all of that. So the right answer there for that question 8 is B. Then we go down to 9. We go down to question 9. They say, who is called the poet of beauty? The poet of beauty. Now that question there is John Keats. Now remember that John Keats is one of the poets whose works we are studying in poetry, selected poems of John Keats. He is remembered for his ability for his connection with Hellenism, which was a representation of the classics, which he drew quite a lot from. He drew quite a lot from that period into his works. So the right answer there is C, John Keats. Then we go to 10, the last one for literary theory. It says, what is the greatest modern English dramatist? Who is the greatest modern English dramatist? Now that one is clear. The greatest modern English dramatist, William Shakespeare. Now it is so clear because he is not just from England itself, but the world at large. He's the best that the world had ever seen because his plays were quite iconic. Right up to now, we still continue celebrating. He was a genius, so he has been the greatest. Now that is that for the 10 questions in literary theory. We are going to pause the video here, and then when next we come, we follow up with the remainder part of the MCQs, looking down at the questions that come from the 10 texts under study. So the video has been profitable. Let me phrase it like that, following the words used by Charles Dickens. In hard times. If the text has been profitable, now remember Grad Grind and the philosophy of rationalism, everything comes down to profit. So if the video has been profitable, then you take your finger and you smash the like button, you smash the share button, and of course you smash the subscribe button. You're not paying any franc. It only takes you a leap and a few ounces of energy to hit that button, and that does it. So we are going to continue this from questions 11 right down to question 50, and I'd like you to be part of our conversation. If there's anything here that you like to comment, because it is our forum, we all are members of the literary community. It's our forum, not just mine. And I want to say that literature is a beautiful discipline, and life is a learning ladder. Nobody knows it all. If you have something that you can contribute in growing our platform, just go down the comment section and politely drop it in there, so that in my next video I might talk about it and bring it up. And like I said at the start of our video, if you have any question paper, any paper one that you really love that we review it again in any of the mocks, I don't have all. If you can able to help out, get something, you can even, I'll put my number down there. You can even have a snapshot of it, send it, WhatsApp it on me. If you don't have my number, just comment down there, ask for it. I'll give you my number, so you can send it to me on WhatsApp, and then I'll get a copy, and then I'll revise it here on this platform. I'll revise it on this platform and discuss some other issues that might come up as a result of that question, and then put up the video out there. So I want to encourage students again from every part of the country, whether you are in North, you are in the center, you are in Southwest, you are in the Northwest. Distance is not a barrier. We thank God for the evolution of technology. It has come right down to our doorsteps. It shouldn't be a barrier. Wherever you are, you can join the academic community one way or the other. Just be part of the forum. Gone are the days where you feel that you must sit in a traditional classroom and learn something. These days, even in your bedroom, you can grab quite a lot. There's so much knowledge that comes to you. All you need is just an Android phone and you get connected. So if you are wherever you are, please just get into the platform and try to share this video and get your friends up, get your friends in. Talk about it in your little study circles, take it to school, and just share, so that we all can help build the platform. So I'll see you again in our next video.